Welcome, everyone. As the clock strikes 8:30, February 21st, episode 25.
Of deceit. Telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Absolutely it is. And just give me 1 second. Having a little bit of what we call technical difficulties so far. Just give me 1 second. I don't know why it's not. Here we go. Okay. Hey, I broke community standards already. Fuck you, Zuckerberg. So, good evening, everyone. The clock is strike 8:30, February 21st, 2025. This is episode 25. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your time. If you are not subscribed at my YouTube at Brew Media, do that now. Like, share, and of course, all comments are welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk a lot of economics. First, I want to say congratulations to the Yankees today. Go Yankees. So a few of the topics that I'm going to go over. Hooters, not enough to bring in the money. Bankruptcy now on the table. Mortgages, will they go extinct for some areas of the country? Looks that way. Monetary policy, is the Fed looking at the right numbers? The financial media lies once again. Retail sales take a nosedive. It's open season on firing employees. Social Security spin, who's defrauding who? Well, I can answer that easily. The whole system is a fraud. And America becoming the crypto capital? Let's hope not. Fort Knox might become Fort of the Hard Knocks. This and a whole lot more. Oh, thank you, Matt. Yeah, I have the monkey suit on. I had a lot of stuff today. Hi, Amy. Hi, everybody. I appreciate you guys. I had a lot of deals today and things to do, and I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'll just leave it on. So this and a whole lot more. So strap yourself in. Have a nice drink. Take a pill. Whatever turns you on. Just a reminder. I like to give quotes from our founding fathers. And tomorrow is George Washington's actual birthday. And let's do a quote from George Washington. It is not tyranny that we desire. It's just limited federal government. Now let's get into it. And Hooters, famous for dressing its waitresses in tight-fitting t-shirts to sling wings and beers, could be going belly up. Let's listen to Hooters commercial. Yeah. Okay. Cut it. So the casual dining chain is preparing for a potential bankruptcy filing as it works with its creditors on a plan to restructure its operations, according to Bloomberg News. The company has hired the law firm Ropes and Gray. Ropes. That's kind of funny. To assist with the process. Individuals familiar with the discussions told the outlet, while no final decisions for seeking Chapter 11 protection have been made, they're expecting filings could take place over the next 2 months. That I literally just got that story handed to me like 30 minutes ago. This is kind of my thoughts. I mean, Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy, a bunch of eateries. I know McDonald's, they closed a whole bunch of stores. We're seeing firings happening all over the place. And I have a feeling what this election did was gave a license to fire. Now it's cool to fire. It's like, hey, we're just going to fire a bunch of people, whether if we're doing good or not. Now, I can't speak for Hooters. I don't know what their books look like. I did not look into them. But I have a story, another story tonight, where there were mass firings, and the company has record profits. So, we used to not see that. Usually you tighten your belt when your company is hurting, but we're seeing an awful lot of companies firing people that have record profits. Walmart, Meta, and several other companies that come off the top of my head. But I thought it was kind of funny also that I have already broken community standards. Hey, Amy, how you doing? So, something that I've been talking about for a very long time, and this goes to all homeowners out there or people trying to sell your home, is that lenders would eventually stop giving loans out to huge sections of the country. And now we're starting to see confirmation of that. Now there are places around the country that are completely uninsurable, and as a result, banks are hitting the brakes on providing mortgages. I was saying that this was eventually going to happen, and here we are. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, stated that he predicts in the near future mortgages will be impossible to obtain in certain parts of the country. So if you live in an area with high fire, high hurricane, high, flood areas, mudslides, things of this nature, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a mortgage. See, here's the thing. In order for you to obtain a mortgage on a piece of property, the lender requires you to have insurance. Now, if you end up paying off the mortgage, you could decide whether or not to have insurance. Now, me, as an investor of real estate, I mortgage my homes, every house, and not mortgage, I'm sorry, insure all of my homes, whether if it's cash or not, cash bought or not. Because you just never know, and, I don't want somebody falling on the property, getting sued, a storm coming and, destroying my investment. And, I see people with $1 million plus homes all over the East Coast and West Coast that no longer hold insurance. And I think that is a huge risk. I think if you're doing that, you're playing roulette with your savings. Lenders and insurers have been pulling the plug out of the risk-prone areas. And if you're sick, now here's the thing. A lot of states now create these state insurances where if you can't get private insurance, the state will cover you. Well, now lenders are putting the brakes on that too. Because what's happening is they can't trust the state. They don't believe the state can fund the insurance program, right? They say, look, there's a reason why insurance companies cannot afford to take a risk in certain areas and on certain properties. And so, lenders, they understand that. And so now what we're going to see as pressure builds on insurance companies that are pulling out, we're going to see lenders just say, you know what? Even if you have a nice home, we're not gonna give you a loan. Not because the house isn't worth it, because you can't get insurance. I don't have any hurricane insurance here in Florida. Man, I'm sorry, Amy. Yeah, I mean, what happened in Florida is really sad. Again, why can't, why is it hard to get, hurricane insurance in Florida? Because of inflation. People have to understand that, there's a cost to rebuild a home. And the higher that cost goes up to find laborers, materials, and how many times can they rebuild something that's been knocked down or damaged? They can't do it. And so, in order for the insurance companies to stay solvent, they cannot provide that kind of insurance. So then what happens is the federal government steps in, the state steps in a lot of times. But even that is inadequate for what you actually need. Like I have a friend in North Carolina who just got a notice with all the talk of North Carolina. You know, everybody's bragging right now how North Carolina, you know, so much is being done. Well, my friend's home was completely wiped off its foundation, and they're not getting a check. There is no FEMA check. It's been denied. They're denying policies all over the place. I have another person on Long Island still trying to collect from a storm 2 years ago. You know, and it got approved, but it's you know, I mean, come on, 2 years later, how long does somebody have to wait to get their check? You know, it's completely ridiculous.
Hey, Donald Trump here. I love Hooters. I go for the boobs and the wings. I would like a chicken breast. Hold the chicken. Love this guy. Good night.
Thank you, Trump. President Trump. You gotta love that guy. At least his character. He's a funny dude. Let me see. A lot of people are under the false impression that, well, you know, if I just don't carry this insurance, you know, the government's going to come in to save me. And you know what happens? Like other people that I know that have been in that, like my friends in North Carolina, because again, North Carolina don't get hurricanes inland in Asheville. So they didn't have hurricane insurance either. And you know what happened? They're waiting. They're in the cold. What do you do when the storm comes? You think FEMA's going to go down there and just cut you a check? Trust me, not having enough coverage is just as good as not having coverage for a lot of people. Now, if you have deep pockets and you can afford to front the money while you wait for your check, hey, you know, that's good. And a lot of people are in that situation, but most people cannot afford the upfront cost of that. Yeah, he's definitely a little off, Amy. So monetary policies, is the Federal Reserve looking at the right numbers? So we got the Fed minutes, FOMC minutes, and the report, and it was really interesting. One of the interesting things about the minutes is they continually spoke about having the need to be patient and hold off on additional rate cuts. They said they wanted to maintain their restrictive policies longer and hold off on further rate cuts. Powell said that he is waiting for more signs of inflation to go down to 2%. First of all, there are no signs of 2%. Actually, the signs are all pointing up. So Powell should take his head down from his desk and lift up and actually read the data, because the data is actually going in the opposite direction. He should be saying that we're looking for the first sign. But the interesting part is that Powell keeps saying that we have restrictive monetary policies. And unfortunately, Trump repeats that same thing. You know, everybody thinks that we have restrictive policies, that rates are too high. It's not that rates are too high, it's that prices are too high. You know, their policies are actually not restrictive. That's the problem. Rates aren't high enough to bring down prices. And that's because government needs inflation to pay for all the spending that it's doing. See, that's another part of this whole equation. And why Trump wants to raise the debt ceiling. See, with all the talk of Doge, and look, they've uncovered some pretty interesting stuff. I'm still waiting for the proof. But, you know, look, let's give them time. Let's, you know, see this out, however this works out. Even though Doge is unconstitutional, hey, you know what? If they expose some corruption, great. But when you add in Trump's tax cuts and you add in Trump already told Mike Johnson to raise the debt ceiling, spending is going up, right? And so if Trump is going to cut taxes, increase spending, right? Because right now Doge is nibbling around the corners, right? Now, again, they just started. Let's see where this goes. But as far as I can tell, there could be $5 trillion, $6-7 trillion ahead of us between $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and additional spending that Trump's asking for, added on to the debt. So how do we pay for that, right? Because how do you lower taxes while increasing debt and growing government, right? Because if you expand spending, you're expanding government. You got to pay through it through inflation. And that's what's going to happen. So we are not getting less spending. We are going to just redirect the spending elsewhere. Had the Federal Reserve raised rates to restrictive territory like Paul Volcker and Ronald Reagan did in the 80s, both the private sector and federal government wouldn't be borrowing all this money. Let me explain exactly to prove to you how we are not restrictive. Look at the current nominal rate of inflation. The last month had it up half a percent in prices. That equals 6% inflation. If you annualize that, the last 3 months was 5%. But the Fed's fund rate is 4.5%. That means we actually have negative rates, right? So if I borrow money at 4.5%, but inflation is 5-6%, right? I'm getting 1.5% the more I borrow. Inflation destroys my debt, right? So this is the problem. This is the shell game that's going on. And that's why, and Trump Trump showed his cards today in a press conference. You know, he's talking to the governors, and Trump has a tendency to spill the beans when he's talking. And when he was talking about tariffs, he basically said, look, we're going to bring in all this extra tax money. He said it. He mentioned taxes. And he was right, finally. You know? So, look, when government spends more money, it is a tax. And either they could tax you honestly through the federal government, through sales tax, through consumption taxes, right? Through corporate taxes, or they could tax you dishonestly through inflation. What we've been getting is everything above. We've been getting tariffs, we've been getting the income tax, we've been getting the corporate tax, we've been getting sales tax, property taxes, this tax, that tax, your mama's tax, right? So people are struggling, right? They can't take another tax, right? I was having a discussion today with a friend of mine talking about Canada. And, you know, basically the problem is, you know, if we put tariffs on Canada, you know, we pay the tax, not Canada. You know, the worst thing Canada can do is retaliate because then they pay the tax, right? Canada and Mexico would be better off not retaliating, but rather cutting their government, cutting their spending, right? Because then we get stuck with not only the tax, but also the less productive capacity that we're going to have. Is it true if we work in person get 5,000? Well, here's the thing, Amy. You only get the 5,000 if Elon can find $2,000 worth of cuts. You know, my problem with that story, first off, they're never going to get to $2 trillion. There's no way. Not without cutting defense, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. You cannot get to the $2 trillion. That's an impossible number without touching that other stuff. Because I did the numbers. If you cut everything out but those programs, you're at like 1.6, 1.7 trillion. So you're talking about austerity measures to get to the 2 trillion. But okay. Here's the real problem I have with it, because this happened after 9/11. After 9/11, they came up with, remember they had the terror alert? And it was like every day it was like solid red, terror alert. And it used to scare the crap out of people, right? To scare people to death. And then they came up with the policy of, hey, you see something, say something. That's Elon's plan now. What his plan is, and as a libertarian, I totally reject this. I'm sorry. I am not, look, first off, I don't know what my neighbors do. I can assume what they do, right? But I really don't know their finances, right? But Elon's plan is, hey, you see something, say something. So basically, rat out your neighbor, rat out your family member, rat out the employee next to you. They want to turn everybody into snitches for the government. And so here's why I really hate stuff like this, is because people, like, let's say if you have an enemy, and somebody can just say, hey, you call up the Elon hotline, right? And they're going to send one of their Doge people out to your house, probably an FBI agent or somebody, and they're going to say, hey, they're going to interrogate you. You're going to have to probably hire a lawyer, right? But maybe you're completely innocent, and it's just retribution because somebody hates you. It's going to be the same as women when they call the CPS on each other. Yeah, that's right, Julie. So what happens is, that's a great point. So what's going to happen is, this is going to be a program that, it's going to turn Americans against Americans, which I completely hate, which really is hypocritical to MAGA. Because, a lot of my real hardcore MAGA friends, they like to say, oh, Democrats are so divisive. And many of them are. But what's more divisive than turning Americans against Americans? And for what? The federal government? See, here's the thing. You think like, oh, I'm a good little boy and girl. I'm going to do the right thing for my government, and they're going to reward me with a cookie. Let me tell you something. They'll go after you as well. So, I grew up in a time where, you kept your business in your house. I understand today everything's on the internet, like I'm doing right now, broadcasting from my little studio here. But, you kind of kept your business to yourself. Like, people could see me, like I have my own little show, but like, they don't know my private business, right? Because I choose not to display that, right? I display what I feel like displaying, right? And that's kind of how you should live too. But like, this sort of thing gets people to like attack other people and like, oh, you know what? That person said something really mean to me on Facebook. I'm going to turn that guy in or that girl in. Like, that's the part that I don't like. I'm not happy that they fired lots in the CDC. Well, not just, yes, that the CDC, they fired the nuclear workers. And guess what? Trump admitted the other day that they don't even know the people that they fired in the nuclear facility. That they're trying to find them. They can't even find half of them. And I said, I had a conversation the other day about that. I said, if I was fired, if I worked for the CDC, or I worked in some science-based health thing, or I worked anywhere in the government, just to be honest, or the nuclear, sites, and I was fired like that, you think I would go back? Actually, I would take the nuke codes, take them and flush them. You'd never get them back. Like, I would take them and throw them out. Because, you can't treat people like garbage. And that's my point regarding this is open season on firing people, right? It's look, and I was trying to explain this to friends of mine who aren't understanding why I'm not for Doge. Because I am for limited government. I'm a libertarian. I want government so small you can't even see it. But here's the thing. Under the Constitution, okay, the president does not have the power to start a department on his own. Anybody can look that up. You can look it up right now. Then Trump starts this department, and now we don't even know who the leader of the department is, right? See, there's something called the Freedom of Information Act, and we as citizens have a right to address grievances with our government, any department. How can I file a complaint against the leader of Doge if we don't know who he is, right? Also, another problem that Trump has, and again, I understand Republicans are flying high from this win that Trump had, but poll numbers are going down because a lot of people who are getting fired were Trump supporters, right? These are hitting a lot of people who supported Trump. And so what is going to happen? Because you can trust a Democrat will eventually win again. Just like, whether if you believe it or not, when Biden became president, that's why Biden was able to undo everything Trump did. Because he didn't go through Congress. In his first term, he used his pen, right? The problem Trump has is he keeps using his damn pen. So, the next president that comes in is just going to reverse everything, right? I mean, I'm also hearing now that J.D. Vance is starting to turn on Trump a little bit. Mike Johnson is starting to turn on Trump a little bit. Republicans are starting to get pissed off with Trump. And for good reason. Because, see, I would have more respect if Trump goes to Congress, let's say Doge, let's say if he creates Doge, and says, look, we need to get rid of 100,000 employees, right? Okay, fine. Then Trump takes that request, brings it to Congress, and Congress says, hey, we need to we need to shrink this part of government. And then what you do is you give these people an off-ramp, right? You give them a chance to find another job. You give them 90 days, right? You give them 6 months, right? Maybe you give them 18 months, right? But when you throw people out of the CDC, or you throw somebody out of the nuclear facilities, right? All of this stuff, you just throw them out like they're garbage. You know, these people have families, they have children, they have mortgages and homes and cars, right? You know, these are productive people, right? These aren't lazy people on welfare. These are people actually providing a service. Now, I'm all for cutting jobs, right? But we have to be smart about it, and we certainly have to know who we are firing, right? With all of the people that work for me, all right, at my height, okay, I had over 120 people that worked directly for me at my height before COVID. And, you know, I would not just fire people without knowing who they were, right? You know who they are, right? And there's a reason for the firing, right? I thought that Trump was going to go in. This is how he sold his campaign. We're going to go in, we're going to get rid of the DEI, we're going to get rid of the least productive people, right? The people who are dragging, you know, not doing their job, right? That's not what's happening. What they're doing is, they're just saying, hey, if you received a job within the last 6 months or whatever, you're gone. Well, what if these are young talent? What if these are really great employees? And then what if you're keeping the people who are dragging us down? Like, you know, we're not even looking at what we're doing, right? Trump would never do that in his own business, right? Trump wouldn't just go in a hotel and say, oh, we're just going to blindly fire everybody, from level 5 to level 10 stories, right? No, he would go in and say, okay, where's the dead weight, right? And get rid of it. And then replace it with something better, right? That's how he became successful, right? So again, that's why I don't support Doge, for unconstitutional reasons, and the whole thing was sold completely differently than what we're getting. And look, I didn't vote for Trump, but I want him to be successful, right? Our country needs a win, damn it. We have been losing for so long. And anybody who's been reading my stuff or watching me knows I always wish him the best. So I am not like deranged in some way, like, oh, everything he does is bad. That's just not true. But what I always advocate for is for him to follow the Constitution, right? Because if he was to just follow the Constitution, he would be wildly successful. Whether if you're talking about monetary policy, limited government, right? The role of government, right? Congress, first off, he is going to make it tough for Congress, because what's happening is that the American people see that Congress isn't doing anything as well. So guess what? They're going to vote the bums out. You think Republicans are going to keep the House come the midterms? Of course not. Now, luckily for the Republicans, the Democrats have been neutered, right? They are just as pathetic as they've ever been. Now, there's Bernie Sanders. There's a few out there, very few Democrats that are actually fighting back. And actually, I have to say, Bernie has been making a really good argument against the Republicans. Now, again, as far as economics go, I see completely different than Bernie. But when Bernie talks about, jobs, when Bernie talks about the Constitution, and how Trump is violating it, he's not wrong. And that stuff sticks, right? So, if you support Trump or the Republican Party, you should be calling your legislators, getting on the phone, emailing them, telling them to do their job, and stop allowing Trump to just keep using his pen. See, I've watched Trump several times change direction. When the people started getting pissed off, Trump would change. And so, he needs to hear from you. If you're a Trump voter and you're mad at what you're seeing, you need to see. That's why it's important to post about it, to call, to go out there and tell the truth, because they see it. Whether or not, if you know it or not, all of these systems, X, Facebook, all of them, they're watching us. Like, for instance, the second I got on, literally, I wasn't even in my program here. I already broke community standards, right? So they're watching us. Speak up. Don't be afraid. Don't be a chicken, right? Stand up for what you know is right. And, Trump will change position. Congress knows you're a voter. Use your power, right? So, he would be successful if he lowered his voice and not be so mouthy. I support Trump. Well, good. I agree with you. Trump really doesn't know when to be quiet. I agree with you. And, I thought we would have a more disciplined Trump, especially after almost getting shot. But apparently nothing's changed for him. And it's business as usual. And look, Republicans didn't learn from the first term, right? And Republicans forget. Trump lost the midterms in his first term, right? He lost the presidency, right? Republicans were gone. They were blown out. And if you guys don't listen, you'll be in the same spot come 2 years from now. Not even 2 years, less than 2 years. You're going to lose if you don't get this guy under control. Look, it's not my party. It's not my job to, make those phone calls. If you support Trump and the Republican Party, it is your duty to speak up when he does the wrong thing. Don't be a lapdog. You're not helping your cause, right? The most patriotic thing we can do is challenge the government. That's what the founders taught us. Did you see he fired the post office board members? He reminds me of the Puff Marshmallow dude in Ghostbusters walking through New York City. Well, yeah, again, that's another thing I have trouble with Trump is that, see, the difference between a libertarian, Republicans, and Democrats believe in central planning. Republicans and Democrats believe, well, if I just put the right person in charge, they can tinker with the economy and control it. Libertarians believe in giving the power back to you and letting you control your life, not the government, right? So, here you have Trump becoming the executive order president, which, again, executive order is not in the Constitution. Nowhere does it say the president has executive powers, right? What they do is Democrats and Republicans, I believe it's Section 2 of the Constitution, they read it in such a way that they pretend to have these powers, right? Because everybody wants to abuse the executive order powers. But in reality, they're really not there. Executive orders were not meant to, fire people and do all this stuff, right? They were really meant for like national security stuff. So anyway, I digress. So the financial media lies and gets wrong the highs in the S&P. So the S&P is not at record highs if priced in real money. In terms of gold, the S&P is actually worth less than 2.1 ounces. At the start of the century, the S&P was worth more than 5.8 ounces. So in real terms, the S&P is down 57% over the past 24 years. Just to kind of put that into perspective. And that goes with your housing, the Dow, right? See, you think like, oh, look, the price of my house has gone up, X amount of dollars. Yes. First off, what did it cost you to keep the house, maintain the house, insure the house, pay the HOAs, right? People tend not to add that stuff, but you have to add that stuff. That is the cost of the house. Now, what can you buy with that cash that you got after subtracting all that cost, right? Not much, right? Where gold holds its value, right? It doesn't cost me anything to hold it, right? I have my gold and I hold it. And it protects me from inflation. Now, if you have a house that's, paying you rent, or like me, where, I'm the bank and I'm basically the mortgage lender, where I own the home and then I sell it to prospective buyers. That's a little different. But again, that is free income coming in, free and clear income coming in. That's not, gambling and stuff like that, like on crypto or whatever. So the nominal gains is due to all the inflation. So although the nominal price of the S&P is higher, the actual value of the S&P's priced in gold is much lower. I wanted to go over some key economic data, which proves a lot about what I've been saying for a very long time. So we got the producer price index And remember that on my last show, I mentioned that we got a much hotter than expected CPI. Well, now following up by a much hotter PPI than expected. They were looking for an increase of 0.3, but instead we got an increase of 0.4. So that's literally 25% hotter number. But even worse, the prior month of December was revised from 0.2% to 0.5%, so almost triple. That is a massive upward revision. And my guess is that next month they will end up revising the 0.3 number as well. Again, if you annualize 0.5, we are right now at 6% inflation. That is disastrous for people saving, right? Retirement accounts, Social Security, pensions, right? This is a disaster for people on fixed incomes. And again, year over year producer price index was supposed to be 3.2%. That came in at 3.5%. So all the key inflation economic numbers came in much higher than expected. And when you strip out food and energy, the core, it's even worse. The core was supposed to be 3.3, and it came in hot at 3.6. Once again, gold is hitting all new highs right around $2,950-ish. Silver is right around $33 an ounce. That is the buy of the century. If you have dollars sitting on the sidelines, dump your dollars, keep only what you need. If you can't afford gold, I understand, go for silver, go for junk silver, right? And protect your savings. They are destroying your savings. I think also the gold and silver miners are finally getting the message. They're finally waking up. Remember that inflation is an increase in the money supply and increase in credit. So we need rates to go up that allows a contracting of spending, printing, but also credit if your goal is to bring down spending. So we need to bring down credit. We need to bring down the supply of money. And again, when will things get better? Trump promised. Well, see, that's the problem, Amy. This is why we have to slow down as a society. Stop. See, the biggest problem that I see Americans get into is they get all hyped up on something. Like let's take that Social Security meme that went around everywhere that ended up being wrong, right? So far, there is zero proof that people 150 years is getting a check. And the reason why Doge is making so many mistakes is because they're going too quick. First off, they don't know how the government works. His people don't know how to read the stuff, right? Everything they're reading is wrong. So when they're posting stuff, showing receipts, their receipts are bullshit, right? Like, literally, I have a guy in Germany who can make a receipt. I can literally make a receipt to show anything, right? Especially with today, the way AI is and stuff, things can be manipulated all the time. So what I'm asking voters to do is to sit back and think. Ask for the proof, right? Watch what these people are saying, right? Pay attention. Because, you have Trump talking about tax cuts and talking about increase in spending. Well, that's Keynesian economics 101, right? All that is to stimulate the economy, juice the economy, which is going to increase prices, right? So what he's looking to do is to rain a bunch of money on people, right? And they're coming up with this $5,000 gimmick that's never going to happen, right? And again, should we be giving out $5,000 to people when You have $36 trillion in debt, right? It's a ridiculous plan. And most economists, right or left, agree with me that, you know, we need to cut spending. Even Democrats, see, Republicans need to listen to Democrats. Democrats are even saying, they're agreeing with you, but you guys aren't hearing it. Democrats are saying, hey, I'll work with Trump. I'll, you know, help to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, right? They want a seat at the table, but you guys aren't doing it. So what's happening is Trump is doing everything by the pen. Doge is just acting wild. And I am telling you, as I'm sitting here, prices will not go down. The debt will go up. You will be paying a lot more, and your retirement account is getting destroyed. And it's a shame, because all of this really, you know, could have been prevented. And you know, so I'm looking at the clock. Okay, so you know, Fort Knox. So here's another story that I found really interesting. So Fort Knox is going to be audited, and really this could destroy the dollar. We could be Fort of the Hard Knocks, right? So the last time Fort Knox was audited was 1953. So not many Americans were alive when that took place today. So how do Americans know if the gold is still there? Well, we don't. Maybe we don't even have it. Maybe they leased it. Maybe they sold it. Who knows? Maybe some of it was stolen. Nobody knows. The truth is that it really doesn't matter in the sense that it used to matter. Because back in the 50s, when they were auditing the holdings, people who held Federal Reserve notes, dollar bills, or Treasury notes, wanted to know that the gold was there because they wanted the note was going to be redeemable by gold, right? So if you were holding a Federal Reserve note, a dollar, or a Treasury, people wanted to know, hey, you have the gold, right? So Federal Reserve notes were promises to pay in gold. That is what gave the currency value, and that's what's in the Constitution. Dollars were defined by weight of gold. So if you had $35 worth of notes, you owned 1 ounce of gold. Today, it would take almost $3,000 to purchase that same ounce of gold. That is how much we have destroyed the currency. It is not that gold went up, it is that the dollar has gone down. That is why it takes so many more dollars to own an ounce of gold. See, back then, other governments, including ours, ran consistent audits on our gold reserves to make sure that we had gold to back up the spending our government was promising. So, I mean, imagine this. Back then, we would allow France, Germany, Britain, China, whoever, to come to our, you know, vaults. They'd go to the New York Treasury. They'd go, you know, to all the different banks. And they would make sure, hey, do you really have these gold reserves, right? So it was a real independent audit of our gold by foreign countries. And don't forget, back then, our government was so honest. Our banking system was so powerful that other countries would hold their gold reserves in our accounts as well. So we didn't just have our treasure, we had theirs as well. When you look at our government today, would you dare to let them hold on to your gold? I think not. So we knew all the time whether or not our government had the gold to cover the notes that they created. Think of it like accepting a check and checking the balance of the person handing you the check. You wanted to make sure that the person handing you the check wasn't going to give you a check that was going to bounce. Well, during the 1960s, when we really started to run up these deficits for the Great Society programs, the War on Poverty, the Vietnam War, the space race, the war on drugs, all of this new spending, we weren't really doing any audits because we knew that we didn't have the gold to cover the new government spending. It was the 1960s when our country went off the rails. That is the point where you can really point to when our currency took a beating. And we've been taking a beating ever since. And so this was the first time that we didn't have enough gold to cover the notes that the government was creating. So instead of reining in spending, we had the government devalue our currency before completely taking us off the gold standard. So what Nixon did, see, Nixon was a coward. Instead of Nixon saying, hey, we got to tighten our belt here, Ford as well, the both of them, instead of saying, hey, we got to tighten our belt, and we got to fix this, they devalued the dollar and then they took us off the gold standard, which caused the oil crisis, which caused all of the stagflation and inflation that happened to Carter and to Ronald Reagan. Which, by the way, the inflation never actually went away. See, that's the other thing. We still had inflation, we just had less of it by the end of Reagan's second term. So what happened was a lot of our foreign creditors figured it out for themselves. They all seen these news deficits, and they seen all the money we were spending, and they called bullshit on us. So what happened is that the foreign central banks started dumping U.S. treasuries because nobody wanted to be left holding the bag. Nobody wanted to be left in the ocean without the bathing suit on, right? They did not want paper. They wanted the gold they were promised. So what happened was we had a run on our bank. And that was when Nixon closed the gold window. Nixon tried to slow down the run by devaluing the dollar twice. But the spending the federal government was doing was too great. And thus why now we have a full fiat currency backed by nothing. Fast forward to today. The dollar has now decreased since Nixon closed that window by over 92%. So just think about that. So, Nixon promised, hey, $1 today, I'll never forget, $1 today will be $1 worth tomorrow. Well, no, actually wrong. We're missing 92 cents of every dollar. The reason why we need to have gold still in our vaults, even though we are not on a gold standard, is because if we have a run on our banks today, and the dollar starts to plummet, which, by the way, will happen. People, matter of fact, I was just having this conversation today. People believe that we are the cleanest shirt in the hamper, when in fact we're the dirtiest shirt in the hamper. See, we don't make anything anymore. We're unproductive as a society, right? We rely on every country, right? We have to borrow money in order to buy the things we don't have, right? So basically, when you look at China, when you look at Canada, when you look at Mexico or Europe, right? They have to loan us money. Just hear me out on this. They loan us money because we couldn't pay our prior bills, right? So then we take that money to go buy more of their stuff, right? So they are basically vendor financing our entire economy, right? So when these people in Congress say, and presidents say, year after year, raising the debt ceiling. We have to raise the debt ceiling to pay our bills. Wrong. Because if you paid your bills, you wouldn't have to raise the debt ceiling, right? Because people who pay their bills don't have to take out more debt, right? But here's the thing. So again, we could... Now, the reason why we need the gold, is because if there's a run on the dollar, right, and other countries, like let's say Trump really takes this trade war to the next level, all China, Canada, and Mexico have to do, just start dumping treasuries, right? Just say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to hold these notes anymore. And guess what? There is nobody in the world to buy them. Right now, we don't have enough countries to buy our debt, right? So what happens is that the Congress will raise the debt ceiling, and maybe they'll get, 40, 50, 60% of that debt. Foreign countries will buy it. The rest of the debt we're monetizing by the Federal Reserve. So we are forced to print more money, expand the money supply, that's inflation, just to keep up with the debt that we're creating, right? Now, if they start dumping treasuries, which I believe is got to happen, then if we have the gold, right, the whole purpose of the gold is that then you can sell the gold, right, and buy back those treasuries and protect your currency. That's why China has been building their gold, Russia, other central banks, like China, have been buying a ton of gold over the past 4 or 5 years. Why? Because they don't want to rely on the dollar. They know the dollar's had its day, right? They can see the writing on the wall, right? And so you have gold to protect your currency. Well, if it turns out that the gold is not there in Fort Knox, if Trump is that stupid to allow Elon to show that we don't have any gold in our vaults, okay? That will be the biggest, dumbest mistake our country has made since creating the Federal Reserve and going off the gold standard, because that means we have just shown the world our cards that our dollar is defenseless. We are defenseless, right? And what's going to happen? You're going to see foreign countries drop the dollar like you've never seen before. And that's going to be a disaster, because guess what? The OPEC countries, as far as pegging the dollar to oil, they're done with us, right? Other countries are figuring out that they do not need the dollar to trade with. See, the misconception that a lot of Americans have is that other countries need our dollars. Why? Why do they need our dollars? They're not worth very much, right? Compared to other currencies. You're talking just a few fractional points more, right? Actually, holding dollars is the biggest risk you can have. Why? Because we're the ones with the most debt. We're the ones that are unproductive. And if we don't have the gold, right, that means we are completely, we're a boat without an engine. We're a boat without a rudder. And so, yeah, so again, you gotta, again, who do you blame for this? Again, I blame both parties. I blame Republicans and Democrats. They're the ones that have been in control, for the past 50, 60 years. It's their monetary policies and fiscal policies that have got us to this situation. And I agree that we need to cut government, but we need to be smart about it, right? We shouldn't show our hand to the rest of the world, right? We need to defend our currency. And the best way to do that is to not show them that we don't have it, number one. But number two, if we don't have it, we need to get it. And we don't need to go buy crypto, right? That could be a disaster for us. If that's the play that they're making, oh, we'll have a crypto reserve. Listen, nobody needs a dollar and nobody needs crypto, right? I don't need crypto. You don't need crypto. There is nothing of value of that. Gold, on the other hand, people need gold, right? It's in dentistry, aerospace, computers, cell phones. It's been around for thousands of years. Gold has been around since the Big Bang, right? Since the beginning of time, okay? And it's not going anywhere, right? And so we need to go back to sound economic and fiscal policies. And those are the policies that I wanted to share with everybody. Look, I appreciate everybody for coming. I didn't really want this to be too much of a political night. And I wanted to really talk more economics on this program tonight. So listen, I appreciate everybody. Please, if you're not on my YouTube at brewmedia.com, brewmedia at YouTube, please go there. Please subscribe. I'm getting new subscribers all the time. People are watching my videos. They like them. So look, I appreciate you guys. God bless. Have a great weekend. And remember, tomorrow is George Washington's birthday. I want to see some happy birthday George Washingtons out there. I love you guys. God bless. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.